All right, boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Murray Area Chamber of Commerce Digital Meeting Series. We're going to have to come up with an acronym for that sucker, man. That's a long one, man.
That is a long one.
Yeah,
how are you, Jeff?
I'm lovely. Yeah, you can see I have a different background because I am broadcasting from remote today.
Ooh.
Yes, I'm in the lovely Bear Lake area.
Ooh, it's opened back up, huh?
Well, I don't think you can close a lake. It's just right there, you know. So,
That's
I'll show you. I'll post a picture of it because it looks quite lovely.
Oh, I bet.
After our thing, but I'm super. You know, it's my sister's condo, and she was kind enough to let me come here. And she has so many cute knickknacks here. You know.
So,
all bear related.
Oh, well, of course, Bear Lake. Bear related.
So I'd like to say,
welcome
to everybody. Welcome.
It's a bear welcome.
Welcome.
Love it. Oh my gosh, I love it.
And sometimes, if you look very carefully out there, you'll see some bears going by.
Ooh. Nice.
Yes, there you go.
Question is, Jeff, did you bring the kitty? Did you bring your missus?
Yes, she's here. Miss Ivory in the house.
Oh my gosh.
She's a road kitty. And then you know I like to cook, so there's a cooking bear. Yeah. It's
like the hat.
Hi everybody. How's it going?
Oh my gosh. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, and I could probably pull out about 100 more around here, but actually it's very nice. It's a good change of scenery and get out and see beautiful parts of Utah and yeah. So
right.
I've been hunkered down for a while, and it's nice to be hunkered down with a different scenery right now. So
I bet.
Cool. How you been?
I've been good. It's been good. I'm tired of the winds. So tired of the winds. But it'll be good. But it's supposed to drop like 20 degrees tomorrow.
Yeah, it's supposed to go to 47 here tomorrow. So
holy cow. That's cold.
Yeah, but
cold.
From 73 today to 47 tomorrow. But welcome to Utah, right?
Huh. Yeah, welcome to Utah. Yeah, she's bipolar, all right? Right?
Exactly. Ha!
Yeah.
Good one. That's a good one. Anyway, there's some chamber news I wanted to talk about that I've seen since I've been on the road. Yeah, so I need you to talk about it. So there is a new task force that one of our chamber board members is on with Murray and Midvale to, phase in the reopening of our economy. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. It's called the Murray City Recovery Task Force. And I could be leaving an acronym or something out of that. It headed up by Joel Silverswig, which is with Comcast. And we have Murray City, Midvale City, ourselves. We're actually teaming up on tomorrow's call with the LGBTQ plus chamber and the Black chamber, and soon to have these Hispanic chamber joining with us. But yes, it's a new way. It's a way to get the word out on how you want to relaunch your business or get yourself reopened, because we're no longer orange. We're now yellow, or parts of Utah are still orange, I should say. West Valley City and Salt Lake City, which I find is really interesting. But the rest of us are yellow, so business is opening up. Have you noticed increased traffic on the road? Because I have.
Oh, yeah. And then also, I've noticed in more of our rural areas, especially here at the Utah-Idaho border, I think there's no virus at all because nobody's wearing masks. Nobody, and also I think you're required to have a big truck too. And so I'm gonna have to get a big truck.
Or a 4-wheeler. I always see 4-wheelers running around up there, right?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we're excited to have that launching. We're got Fox 13 made a news announcement about it. KSL has. So watch Telemundo. Telemundo's partnering with us. So there's going to be a lot of Spanish. Yep. So it's catching attention. So if you know of any businesses that need help on how to reopen and what the PPP, where are we at with that, and the EIDL and all these other there's a new grants coming out. Utah Media Group has a grant coming out. We want to get business going. So let's do it.
I think if nothing else, we're just going to need a glossary of new acronyms, right?
So that is so true. That is
so
true.
So after we get off this broadcast, Steph, if you could get that infographic together, that'd be cool. And we have some messages coming in, and Charwood is telling me that my mic is too hot. Is that right, Char? I think so.
Your mic is too hot.
My mic is too hot. And Marie is telling you left out economic in your spiel there.
Thank you, Marie. Yes. So Murray City Economic Recovery Task Force. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So good. That's
all right,
great.
Cool. Well, I am very excited about today's program, and it seems like one after another we keep topping ourselves, right?
I know. It's good. And I'm excited to hear from this too. This is good. This is controversial. We're right on the edge, right? But it's good.
All right. She says my gate is too strong. So.
Oh, your mic is too strong?
No, I don't know. I'm going to do my best, and I'll talk slowly. Yeah. So anyway, so this is actually the first time that I've done live research on my topic today.
So tell me about that experience.
So I went so our guest today, his name is Tim Pickett, and he is a Utah provider for medical marijuana under Utah's new Medical Marijuana Act.
Oh, great.
So I don't know if I probably haven't really told many people about this, but about 8 months ago, while painting my vaulted ceiling, I fell off my ladder.
Oh.
And fell down on my arm, and I broke 8 ribs up the back.
8? Oh.
8 ribs. Yeah.
Oh. Were you alone?
No.
Were you alone when you fell?
No.
Oh, good.
So
okay.
I had a quick rescue. But what happened is, I spent almost a week in the trauma center at IMC. And being not the youngest pup that I used to be, it takes a while for things to heal up on this body these days. So anyway, I've been having pain issues because they said it could take up to 2 years to heal. And
no way.
And then, which also inhibits the sleep, right? So anyway, as most people get when you have a traumatic injury like that, I was prescribed the gamut of opioids, the oxy this and the perca that and morphine and all that sort of thing. And that's always been doesn't work well with my chemistry for some reason. And it's really nice that there is an alternative. And I know a lot of people have some difficulty with those types of things and would like new alternatives. So I actually went so I could report on it through the entire screening process to get my Utah medical marijuana card.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I did that on just past Thursday. And I went to visit Tim, and we're going to get deeper into that experience. But so you can say I'm not only the host, I'm a client, right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, the hair club for men or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued to hear this. I'm intrigued to hear what your experience was, and I'm intrigued to hear from Tim and what that process looks like.
Well, I think we should stop yapping and bring him into the feed. What do you think?
Bring him on. Come on.
All right. As you can tell, again, I'm doing self-producing. So let me get him over here, and boom, just like magic. Woo! And there he is, Tim Pickett.
Yep, the llama. This way.
So really happy to have you here, Tim. It's been a while since I visited you. We were both very professional. We were all masked up.
Yes.
In fact, I had my mask on. He had his mask on.
Wow.
I thought I was going to get a job with my mask on like that. I was going to be able to help around the place. But anyway, so anyway, welcome, Tim.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and kind of dispel some of the myths and talk about what this is like right now.
All right. Well, that's what we're here for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you introduce yourself and give us some background, tell about your shop there and some of the services you provide, and then we'll get into the convo. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, to introduce myself, I'm Tim Pickett. I'm a physician assistant in Utah, and I've been working in acute care and trauma and GI surgery for the past 6 years here locally. And I really have had an interest in medical cannabis for a long time. I've studied it myself. Really, there's no formal training that any of us get in medical school or in our medical training. So I've got some friends and some close colleagues that are involved in the growing industry and the production side. And so I really wanted to get good information out to people. So I started a clinic, Utah Therapeutic Health Center, and utahmarijuana.org, a website where people can kind of go and get just good, straight information about what the process is like in Utah, how to get a medical card, or what the qualifications are, and so that's a little bit of my background. I'm a Utah native. I was born and raised here. So I understand. I think the culture of Utah. I was raised right in the heart of Bountiful, where a really conservative culture. So that's kind of the basics of what we're doing. We're here on 3900 South, and we see all types of patients, from really young patients to, I think our oldest patient so far is in their 80s. But definitely some really young kids that are referred by neurologists for their seizure disorders and things like that. So a lot of just a really wide variety.
What's the youngest? Yeah. What is the youngest client you've seen age-wise?
I mean, to be honest, the youngest patient that we have seen is 11 months. Yeah, I'm not, and then, in the single digits, but that's not to say that those patients are using THC. That's just patients that I see on referral basis to try to talk about the cannabis plant and how it may or may not help. So I'm not, we're not issuing cards to kids that are that young.
Okay.
But I'm just, because there's not a lot of expertise with cannabis in Utah, people are really searching out for providers who know a lot about it or who care enough about it to listen to parents. So we see, I mean, that's kind of the extreme case, but we definitely see people in their teenage years. But primarily, we're dealing with adults over 21. It's certainly much more difficult a process for those under 21 to get a medical card. And you have to go through quite a long process that Utah's designed to get that done.
Oh, all right. I did. Can you guys hear me? I did change mics. I've been getting some feedback that my mic has been a little weird today. So that's what you get from changing locations. So I hope everybody can hear me still. So, anywho, so let's first get into why we had this discussion in your office. You have dealt with emergency medicine, so yes. You see people coming in who have overdosed from opioids, right?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. That's I gave a kind of a talk to some providers that were trying to get involved to be a qualified medical provider in Utah, and I mean, that was just, that's a normal thing in the ER. Opioids they're not very good drugs to use a lot of. They've caused a lot of problems and a lot of death, frankly.
All right. And then, like we also talked about too, is yes, you've seen, you know, we're going to be completely honest. You've seen some people come into the ER that have been sick over the use of marijuana, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean we call it like the green disease or hyperemesis. That's from using too much. I mean, smoking too much weed. Frankly, that's just how you get it. People are really nauseous. They get pretty sick. And the other thing is the high THC strains that you see on the black market a lot cause some paranoia and some increased anxiety. So we see people like that too. None of those people die, however, like with the opioid crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So those are almost always treatable. In fact, there has not been a single case of death that's been attributed to overdosing on THC. And there's been some really good studies that have given animal studies that have given animals just an amazing amount of THC, and it doesn't kill people. That doesn't mean it's not a dangerous medicine. But when you compare the two, I like to think of medical marijuana as more of an exit drug for those who are on opioids or chronic narcotics, and not really a gateway drug to other hardcore illicit drugs.
But that also seems like that's going to be a big hill to climb of dispelling that type of stereotype and stigma about marijuana and its uses this way, because I've heard that you've heard that the gateway drug thing a million times, as far as that'll lead to that, and that'll lead to that, and that'll lead to that. And I think what you also explained to me too is now you're having the product cultivated, from basically farm to table, you might say, right? Here in Utah.
Yeah. In Utah, because you can't have interstate commerce because it's still federally illegal, you have to have people that are growing the product here. They're growing the plants here. They're processing the plants here. They're packaging them, testing them. Utah has a very strict testing requirement that I think everything has to be within 10% of the label of what it says. And so it really is tracked farm to table, or seed to sale, as they call it in the cannabis industry. And Utah is doing a pretty good job. We're not really full blown. I mean, there's not a lot of growers who have flower in the dispensaries yet. But I know a couple of the growers that are really working towards that, and they're growing some really great product. No pesticides, and it's all tested. So Utah has a pretty good program, or a really good base to build from, I would say.
All right. Well, with that said, let's go just for a little bit. I'm gonna kind of bounce around as far as my experience in your office.
Sure.
And I would say, I mean, the difference is, first and foremost, it's a very professional atmosphere. I was not in the Llama Room, but
I know. So ever since yes. You said it, and that day we had just started doing more in person and bringing people back into the clinic again because of the pandemic. And so so far we've been doing this kind of hybrid where I've had a few patients that we've been able to see. They stay in their car, and I go to them to talk to them. And so we've been bare bones. Honestly, I had a couple of people who they're like, "Hey, I'm parking in the back of this building. This just seems ruined." Like there's no sign on the door. Yeah. Don't worry. You get a receipt. You get a card. It really is.
It's all about level.
But now we have the Llama Room. Okay, and so now we have a few things on the walls, and I really wanted to bring the llama in here, Jeff, so I could prove to you that yes, we have some decorations in the clinic now.
All right. Well, that is very nice. That was the only thing I said. Yeah, well, this place is pretty antiseptic. There's nothing on the walls, and it's just you and me and a couple of chairs and a desk.
Better. Yeah, it's a little better now.
Yeah, but anyway, I was just joking aside. It was a very professional atmosphere. It was as if I was checking into any type of professional appointment situation, a medical appointment situation. I was greeted at the front desk. I was led back into a consultation room, and we had easily, I would say, probably about an hour 10-minute conversation about my history, and not only my history as far as why I was there, like with some pain and sleep issues, but also my past experience with the use of marijuana. Is it a first time? You also talk about the difference of your bodies have different chemistry levels, and they it affects everybody. We also talked about the different strains, also the different levels of THC versus CBD oils. That I mean, there's just I just got to tell you, back in 1985 when I was senior in high school, you just went and got a bag of weed, man. There was no, there was no science to it whatsoever, or this helps for that, or it's been engineered to such a level that no matter what your body chemistry with, and we'll say with a little bit of, you have to stir in the ingredients in your own soup, you might say, to learn what's right for you, with the help of somebody like Tim, a provider, to guide you along the trail. But it is definitely much more watched over, engineered for specific uses, for specific things. And I told you that there are different strains that my body and I don't like, because I just don't like feeling that way. Whereas the ones that relax me, give me some pain relief, and get me a good night's sleep so I can get up and put all this stuff together and talk to you guys, that's what I'm after. So anyway, expand on that as far as how it is engineered and the different types and spreads for different things, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So when people come in here, I think there's two different types of ways you can get a medical card in Utah. You have a relationship with a existing provider, and you go and they give you the certification. And then you kind of have to, as a patient, the patient has to figure it out. They have to stir their own soup, like Jeff alluded to. With me, what I want to do with my patients is really focus on the science behind the medicine, and focus on some of the other things in the plant. Like Jeff was saying, I mean, we have not only THC, but you have a product or a molecule that's Delta 8, which is a sister molecule to THC, CBG, CBC, CBN, these other minor things that are in the plant that we don't know. We know a lot about, but we need to know more. But there's a lot more science that goes into using cannabis as medicine than there was, like you said. I mean, even 10 years ago, you just didn't have the data that we do now. And people who say, and a lot of medical providers, a lot of my peers would say, there's just not enough data. Well, that isn't true. There is a lot of data, and there's a lot of science. And yes, there's a lot of unknowns about how each person reacts to each different plant or delivery method. But that's why going to a provider who knows what they're talking about, I think is more helpful now, and more available to patients now than it ever has been. I mean, California's had medical cannabis for 24 years, and we've learned a lot with the other states that have done it. So, I mean, like Jeff was saying, if you want to sleep better, then you may benefit from more CBN in the strain that you're using, or a delivery method that is more that's longer lasting, not an inhaled method. If you deal with PTSD symptoms, then you're going to want a different ratio of CBD to THC than somebody who's just dealing with pain. And so these are the things that we have available now. And the pharmacists at the dispensaries are really good at this as well. I've talked to some of them, but I think patients just have access to a lot more information now.
All right. So with that said, let's pivot into the lawmaking and the implementation of the law. So right before we went on air, I reacquainted me with the episode you had by the way, that we're going to plug that right now. You have a podcast with friend of the show, Chris Hollifield, called Utah in the Weeds, right?
Yes, Utah in the Weeds. Chris Hollifield and I partnered up. He's a great podcaster. And,
we know that. Yep.
Right, you guys know that. So I was a guest on his I Am Salt Lake podcast, and then he and I started this project together, and we've had a lot of fun. We've done, I think, 9 episodes. We're recording again tomorrow on site at one of the grow operations here in Utah.
Oh, wow.
Really?
That's in your city, Stephanie. So at least for now. or at an undisclosed location.
Oh, okay.
Right. And this has been a really fun, like, we've been able to interview a lot of patients. We interviewed Rich Oborn, the leader of the Department of Cannabis at the Department of Health. And Utah in the Weeds. It's a fun project.
Well, that's the episode that I listened to with Rich Oborn, and there were some very interesting things that he had to say that kind of fall through with the stereotypes as far as me being in the Utah thing. So first of all, Prop 2 was worked on tirelessly by folks to get it on the ballot, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And then it got to the level through the polling that the lawmakers and everybody, the powers that be, are like, oh crap, this thing might actually pass, right?
Right.
And then, lo and behold, it did. And in fact, it drew one of the highest, if not the highest, voter turnout of younger folks in a non big deal election, because it was a big deal election. So anyway, what I'm getting at is, did the legislature screw things up? Did you like the law that the people passed, or what about this one? And obviously it's still moving parts. Yeah,
definitely moving parts. I mean, there's so when we talked to Rich Oborn, he kind of alluded that or led to the conclusion that basically that the people were going to pass Prop 2. If you go back and listen to the interview we had with Desiree Hennessy from Utah Patients Coalition, she has a little different take on it, and the idea that we really did need a compromise, and that the church in Utah was coming out against it, and there was some real question on whether it would pass without doing a compromise or agreeing to some type of compromise before the bill was passed. So anyway, the bill passes and they get the compromise. The compromise wasn't great, in my opinion. There was a lot of problems with it. But for example, like blister packs, it's just not, that was not a reasonable option. But they had to get it done. They had to accept the blister packs. And so since that time,
explain that the blister packs thing.
Yeah, so blister pack, the original compromise bill only allowed processed flower to be sold in dosing form inside a blister pack, just like a pill. So you buy your heartburn pills and they come in a blister pack. Cannabis was in Utah, that was how the law was passed, that the flower would have had to been individually dosed in the blister pack. And then, but yeah, anybody who uses or has used cannabis in high school, whatever, that just is not a reasonable thing. So that has changed, and now flower is available in raw form. And so I think in the beginning, the compromise bill needed to be done. I agree with everybody who made it happen. Just get it done. And then I agree now with the things that have been changed. We expanded the qualification. We lowered the threshold for pain, which I think is reasonable, and there's good science behind that. There are a few things that I think patients have a hard time with. One of them is anxiety, for example, is something that a lot of people already use cannabis for, and it's not on the qualification list. Technically, there's a way to go about getting approval for that outside of the regular channel. But the other thing is smoking. So there's a lot of people who smoke cannabis for their medicine, and Utah law does not allow any combustion of cannabis.
Oh.
Do I agree with that from a medical standpoint? I do. I think that vaporizing cannabis or cooking it at a lower temperature, and we probably talked about this as well, Jeff. This lower temperature inhalation is much healthier for the lungs and the body. It also allows the body to absorb more cannabinoids, which is better for plant-based medicine. Whereas you're combusting it, like if you're smoking a joint, that's really not very good for the lungs, the combustion, the plant combustion. So I agree with that from a medical standpoint, that vaporizing is healthier. But I have a lot of patients who would say, I can do what I want. Like, this is my body. I get to choose how I want to deliver it to my body. And I get that argument too. So I think we're in a good spot. I mean, Rich, I think, would agree. We're in a pretty good spot. I think Utah's done an okay job so far. There's probably things that we need to work on. The thing that I want to work on the most is this patient cap. We're only allowed to see and issue 275 cards or recommendations total. That doesn't renew every year. And, for a family who has a child who has seizures, for example, and they want to go see the person, and they should have the choice of who to go see. So I think the patient cap doesn't work for that situation. If you want to go see the expert and that happens to be me or happens to be Dr. Andon in Ogden, then you should be able to go see that provider, and that we shouldn't be limited.
Well, that would just go down to just basic stuff. Like if I, needed, my knees worked on, or heart surgery or something like that. Mm-hmm. And there's the best guy in Utah, or somebody that I trust through my family or friends or whatever. And the dude said, you're out of luck, dude, because I'm capped at my surgeries and my patients right now. That doesn't really make sense. Especially I would think that would inhibit professionals like yourself for motivation to rising to be the cream of the crop in the city.
Yeah, I mean,
or in the state,
Yeah, we do that, but we're probably the only place that I know of that really focuses on the education piece for the patient from a dosing and delivery standpoint. And I have to educate now. I mean, the benefit is I'm educating other providers. They come in and they're issuing the recommendations for patients with me, so that they can see those patients and they can learn what I know and learn more about the plant. But I have an unlimited, the flip side of this is I can write an unlimited number of Percocet. I can write an unlimited number of methotrexate or an immune modulating drug. And that just seems silly to me that on that side I can do that, but on this side I can't help so many people. So we're working on that. That's a big push for me. But these things I got to be patient. It took us a long time to get to this point.
True.
So was I correct when hearing Rich when he said, so the head guy of the state of Utah Health Department's medical marijuana division has never used marijuana? Is that true?
Yeah, and I have known Rich Oborn for a lot of years, okay? And this guy is a straight shooter. Let me just tell you. Yeah, he's a straight shooter. But you know what? He's smart. And I don't think I would choose anybody else to be in that position. He and I
Really?
He and I have had a lot of conversations. And I think in this particular state, you need somebody like him that's a straight shooter, very, very thorough in his knowledge of what the law reads and what his role and the Department of Health's role. I think if you had somebody who was for just to totally stereotype, but if you had somebody that was a long-haired hippie and was using weed recreationally every weekend, then Utah is not going to like that, and we would have a lot more problems. So I think Rich is doing a great job. My hat's off to the Department of Health. I don't think they chose the best vendor for their software, and I think they've done very good with what software they have. They've worked pretty hard. They came out with a report just a couple of days ago about how many cards they're issuing in Utah, and I think Utah County actually has they take the cake right now. There's more cards have been issued for Utah County residents than for Salt Lake County residents.
Why doesn't that surprise me? Like, not one bit.
Right? But yeah, they issue, I think, 300 or 400 cards a week right now.
Wow.
And yeah, they're up to, I think, 3,700 or 3,900 official medical marijuana cards in Utah as of last week. And there are 320 or so qualified medical providers that are listed. Some of them aren't listed on the website, but they want to keep that part of their job hidden. But there's a lot of interest in this.
Why do you think they want to do that? Are they still worried? I guess it just takes time. And then that's the other thing. We go back to the head guy has never tried marijuana, or at least he says it anyway.
No way. I believe him 100%. Yeah,
but then it reminds me of the criticism that we have of our liquor laws here in Utah, that it's all of our laws are made by non-drinkers, and so now all of our medical marijuana laws are being made by nobody that has any experience with that. And that would be one of the what I would say one of the biggest criticisms is how do you I don't want to.
I agree with
I'm
you.
not going to go to a fine Italian restaurant to have when the chef's only made hamburgers his whole life. I don't quite understand that. That's all.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes down to that you guys are providers, and the people that I visit are the ones that take on the task and the heavy lifting of learning and giving me the proper information under the umbrella of the constantly moving parts that the state has provided you. Would you think that's it?
Absolutely. It makes our job very difficult to keep up with what's moving and what's happening. But it really just falls to us. And then the dispensaries, they really are on the front lines of what is allowed within the state. And we rely on them too to help, because I might know what I want you to take or what I want you to try. But at the same time, the pharmacist knows what products are available in the dispensary to actually sell to the patient. So it's really a team effort throughout the system. But that includes even the growers too. We have some of the best growers in the nation.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
I just know one of them. I just know his product. And he's probably one of the best growers. I would say he's definitely top 10%.
How long has he been in the industry, Tim?
He's been in the industry for over 10 years. He started in Oregon with like a public-private partnership grow operation that they had there.
Nice.
And they brought in some California growers. I think Dragonflies growers out of California. And
do we have the right climate, and do we have the right soil to make the best stuff here?
I think they're growing it. I think they're all going to grow it indoor. I think we grow some hemp. I think people grow a lot of hemp here, but I don't think they're growing. I'm not sure. In the summer they might be able to get a crop, but I think for the most part they're growing under the lights and indoor.
And there is a grow operation in Murray. Is that what you're telling us?
I think it's a temporary operation before their real operation.
I just became just a little bit more Murray proud just now. That's all right.
Yeah.
No. Anyway, let's now pivot into
To be honest, there's probably more than one Murray grow operation.
Have you
seen that book? There's a kid's book, What's Growing in Grandma's Backyard. Teaches little kids about cannabis, like how it's just really medicine.
Let's first now go. Let's talk about quickly. Number one, before I showed up, you managed to go through all of the. Before I showed up to your office, that is, you managed to go through all of the process to get to this point, make all of the investments to rent the office space, buy the llama picture, and learn and become a licensed. What is it? A licensed. What's the official title?
Yeah, qualified medical provider.
Qualified medical provider of not product, but information to get you to the point to get the product. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We are the key. We are the key to the door for patients who want access to medical marijuana. We're essentially that key. You have to go through one of us to get the recommendation.
So you're both the key master and the gatekeeper in a way.
Essentially.
That's cool.
It feeds your ego. Well, you don't go into medicine without a big ego anyway.
All right. So I asked you this question in your office. Why do I trust you? What did you go through?
Yeah.
Make this.
Oh, that's a really good question.
Why are you a pro? Why are you a pro? Can I just like walk down the street and become a pro in a couple of weeks and just say it? Or what did you have to do? Well, first of all, I know you have to have a physician's assistant. Is that correct?
Physician assistant. Yep.
So you got that
degree.
You went to school for that. So that's like
go to medical school for that. That's big school.
That's baseline.
You have to be licensed. You have to be a licensed medical provider, a PA, a nurse practitioner, a doctor of medicine. Any specialty is fine, but you have to be able to write prescriptions for controlled substances within Utah in order to apply to be a qualified medical provider. And then Utah requires a 4-hour, which is probably the least amount that I would suggest anybody do, but they require a 4-hour continuing medical education course, and then then they will license you as a QMP. Beyond that, and that gives you enough information to know what the qualifications are, to know how to navigate the system for your patient or with your patient, and what kind of the pitfalls are from a science perspective of like what to watch out for. Beyond that's pretty much it from a state of Utah perspective. They really rely on the pharmacists at the pharmacy to do the dosing and delivery recommendations for the patient. Now, we can argue all day long about whether, what my opinion about that is. There are some benefits to that because as cannabis is a drug, a pharmacist is very good at drugs. And so that's a good place for pharmacists to be. On the other hand, I know a lot more about the diagnosis, the pain, and the physiology or the pathophysiology of those conditions. And so, and I'm used to writing prescriptions that are followed to the letter of the law, right? Or to the letter of my prescription.
Yeah, honestly, dude, that really makes sense because it almost sounds like I get my prescription at the doctor's office for, my pain or my high blood pressure or whatever. And then I go to the Smith's pharmacy and hand it to him. And the dude is like, oh, no, you want this instead. Or you got this choice and this choice and this choice. So that is a different dynamic of nobody has to specifically follow your instructions. You just give the idea.
Fact, I just give the approval, and then the pharmacist would review the chart and then decide on what to recommend the patient purchase. I mean, so I trust the pharmacist, but there is an argument there that the pharmacist is paid by the manufacturer of the drug.
So they're pimping their own projects.
So
pimping their own products a lot, right?
Yeah, and I know they try not to, but I know what it's like. We had these ethics classes in school. If I own a CT scanner, I'm just statistically more likely to order more CT scans in my office than the guy who doesn't order or doesn't own a CT scanner. And that's just a fact. So providers cannot be, that we cannot have any financial involvement with any of the marijuana product. Anything higher than 0.3 THC, we're not allowed to profit from. So I have no incentive to sell you anything from a marijuana perspective that benefits me at all in any way. So I'm in a good position, I think, to be a non-biased advocate for the patient. And beyond what the state requires, just to kind of finish your previous question, Jeff, was I'm a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, which is a national organization that does a lot of outreach and education. I've read a lot of books. I'm a big reader, and I've done a lot of my own research and studied my own self. I also have, I mean, we've seen a lot of patients here, and I have personal connection to family members with cancer and who've had these conditions for a long enough, and people have really changed their life. I mean, I learn still so much from my patients now. There's so many little tricks that people teach me all the time about how to use this and not get high, or how to use this and sleep better, or how to save money and use your product twice. They vape the flower and then they cook the old vape grindings to use for sleep. And so we're constantly learning. And I mean, there's just honestly, it's the funnest job I've ever had. And not just simply, I mean, we talk about a fun product too. But.
Yeah, well, also that's one thing that Rich said of, you know, the guy from the Utah Health Department, that it's very exciting to be on, you know, the beginning of a bell curve of something that is evolving and learning. And actually, we have no idea a year from now exactly where the laws might stand, or where you know, demand stands. Or, I mean, right now you're not even allowed to have paid advertising.
No, but that comes both from the state level. I mean, the state statute is very strict as far as advertising goes, but also on a national level. I mean, for example, even my Stripe account got shut down because of, you know, the website just mentions marijuana, and like Google won't let you post any ads at all for cannabis related products because it's nationally illegal. So we're restricted a lot, and there's some good and some bad about that.
So do you think that's more of a federal issue than a state issue?
Yeah, I think it's more of a federal issue than a state issue for sure. I think the state is just following what the federal guidelines would be and protecting themselves from having the feds show up.
All right. And that's actually one of the reasons, isn't that the Utah law was originally designed to have a state-controlled central pharmacy. Is that true? Is that true?
Terrible idea, but yes. That was the idea, that the state was actually, in fact, that was part of the reason they abolished that idea, was they were going to have state employees distributing a federally illegal product, and to force those employees to do that distribution was really not a legally good way to go. I don't know a lot of the details. I'm probably screwing that up, but that's my understanding of it. And privatizing that was the solution. But again, that goes back towards Prop 2. Going back to closer to what Prop 2 was passed. And not so much the compromise, which some legislatures are really not very happy about.
Yeah, and I heard that it was actually the county health departments that were going to be tasked with some of these pharmacies that kind of put the kibosh on it.
Yep. And now the way they've run it is kind of a hybrid. They're limiting the number of pharmacies. Does Murray get one?
No, not that I know.
I don't think so.
You probably know better than me. That's all.
Yeah, I think Salt Lake City gets 2. And then they're distributing the pharmacies throughout the state so that everybody can have access to them. And they're really, that's semi-capitalist, I guess, semi-free market. There's been some states though that have had so many dispensaries open up, and then a ton of them go out of business. So they didn't really. That was I don't know. Everything's kind of a balance.
And as far as access, as you mentioned, and we got a few people that are, we need to say hi to Jim Tarr is in the house.
Yes.
Anybody else you say? We said hi to Marie. Chris, he's giving me technical advice, so that's cool.
Oh, good.
And Carol Allman, she says hi. So hi, everybody, and thanks for joining in, of course. Yeah. But now I just lost my train of thought for a second. What I was getting at is, with access, is that Utah is actually going to have home delivery allowed. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. And there are companies that are pretty much ready to go with home delivery, and that's a good deal. We'll see what the prices end up being, but that's a really good deal, because I have a lot of patients who, I have an ongoing list of patients that are in care centers that want to see us, but can't. They're actually locked in, right? They can't leave their facility, and I can't go in. I mean, there's actually been some conversations about how they're not going to allow me in for a cannabis consultation for a patient in one of these care facilities because of the pandemic. They don't think that it's important. So, yeah, there's this home delivery thing would be good for those types of patients too, where they just can't get out. And especially right now, where we're going to be, we're in yellow now, but we might go back to orange or red in next winter. And people really do need access to their medicine. And this really is, I mean, you've got to get over that this really is medicine.
I think, Tim, it's the changing the mindset that, in Jeff's days and my days growing up, it was, like you said, it was marijuana, and that's just what you did. It wasn't filtered. It wasn't, you just got what you got. So do you think it's carried that perception over that it's marijuana, but now that it's medical marijuana, trying to get the public and our legislation to understand that difference, that it is helpful versus opioids and everything else that's going on?
Yes, I think that you've hit the nail on the head, minus one piece. You've talked about the public and the legislature, but I would add the medical providers. And I think I have a role to play in teaching the new students that this is legitimate medicine. And we, as a medical community, as providers, we have to adopt the facts that there's good science behind pain and muscle spasms and nausea using cannabis. And then we can take our patients in the room and we can talk about it in a different way, because I think it's kind of an ironic relationship with patients, because on the one hand, they don't trust us because we were the ones who were distributing and writing for all the Percocet that's killed everybody. And there's been some real controversy with the medical community. And I think so there's a lot of people who don't trust their doctor. But on the other hand, people really trust what we say, and we have a responsibility to give people the truth, whatever we're treating them for. And this really has to be an option for medical providers to talk to their patients about before we make it recreational. Because if we make it recreational too soon, then medicine won't accept it ever, and it will never be allowed, and it'll be a real detriment to the patients, and the patients will suffer.
I like how you put that in, is that don't go recreational so fast, because it would be a detriment to the medical side. But I also stop and think that isn't the testimonies of people that have tried medical marijuana and they've seen that the epilepsy or the seizures have gone down, or the PTSD isn't as bad as it is, or it's cured anxiety, especially with this pandemic, people's anxiety is off the charts. Don't you think that that's a better testimony, that it comes in and then you can say there is legitimate science backed behind it? Because I used to work for a doctor years ago, and he was all about the science. Is there a double-blind study? Is there this going on? And I can understand where that comes from, so that it backs up the legitimacy of medical marijuana is useful versus an opioid.
Yes, we need, so these the studies are difficult because there's 550 different strains of cannabis that we can grow. And every time you grow it and the light is different, the cannabinoid profile might be a little different. So it's really difficult to get a double-blind study where people are using the same amount and their conditions are the same, and we can prove. So I think we may have to do science the opposite way, where we gather data from the user. We put that data in AI, and then we figure out what it was good for. But you're right. It's safe. It's people have benefit, and those two things together, I think, are enough that we should be able to use it as medicine. I think there are reasons there. I mean, there's plenty of other reasons why you should go see somebody before you start it as a medicine. If you're on a statin, it can kind of affect your cholesterol levels with statins, or if you're on a blood thinner, it can affect that. There are reasons why you should definitely talk to somebody who knows about medical cannabis before you start it. But it should be, like you say, I mean, there's plenty of science behind it.
All right. Well, Tim, this is the fun part of this. We're approaching the top of the hour again, and we could easily go on for another hour easy about this stuff. But I thought it was very important for one of the reasons I wanted to meet with you before this broadcast is so we could talk to people of the process to go from point A to point B to point C to point D and how it all works. So
yes.
I'm going to start by just giving a little bit of my experience of what I had, and then we can talk about our experience together as far as you helping me as a patient example. And so how basically for me it started is I find out, I will say that I have experimented in the past because I was recently visiting my daughter up in Oregon for about a month and a half over the holidays and stuff. And I did some experimenting for having some edibles to help with my sleep and my pain. And so with that said, now that this was available, I wanted to be another one of these people that I want to be on the up and up on the legal here in Utah. Because, I thought of, I could just make a Colorado run or something like that, like people have done for a long time. Or let's go through the process and let's be on the straight and narrow with this sort of thing. So luckily, because of my relationship with Chris Hollifield, I found out about you. So I reached out to you and said, you want to be on the show and teach our fine folks about this sort of thing? But before I do it, I'm going to go through it. So you were kind enough to take my appointment. We chatted. I even filmed it all, and we can make a video about that later, the entire process. And you were extremely thorough as far as assessing my needs and what I wanted my outcome to be based on, what was available. And then also you gave me different ideas of different chemical compositions that I hadn't even thought about that might even help me more, different levels, stuff that I didn't even know about. And that is where you came in. Then after that, I was issued actually that afternoon, a letter, and we need to talk about that. There's the card and the letter. Letter comes first, card comes second.
Yes.
And
the letter is a bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
The letter is designed and as a bridge to get your card. So for patients who want access, like that day or the next day, they're out of product or they want to start something like right now, then you can use your letter, which you would usually get on that. When they issue the recommendation, they'll issue you a letter, or I will. And mine comes by email because of the coronavirus, so paperless. And that letter allows you to use cannabis and buy cannabis at one dispensary until you get your card. And the card can take up to 2 weeks, but honestly, within 3 or 4 days, usually everybody has their card. Is that a similar experience to what you experienced, Jeff?
Not quite yet, because unless I haven't checked my email while we've been broadcasting, but I did check before we went on, and I got the card, and I went through the registration process at Dragonfly in Salt Lake City, and I've been approved through them. That happened on Thursday, and then so I got that. So the letter works at the one dispensary. I could go there today.
Yep, you could go there today
if I felt like it. They did say that once I got there, I would have to show an ID that I'm in their system now, and then they would also have me have a consultation with one of their pharmacists that is required by law as well.
So so they do that with every patient, although because I write the recommendation for your dosing and delivery, you don't actually, by law, you don't actually have to meet with the pharmacist, but because everybody else just has that process, they just have they have all patients meet with the pharmacist.
And then past that, that same day when I came back from our consultation, I also went through the state process. So it started out with an IDing process, some general IDing things to make sure I am who I am. Then from that point, which included just basic, like putting in my photo ID. You know, they ask you where you live, your occupation, just basic info. So I'm sure that they can cross-check it against whatever else is on file. Then it goes into the one that's more patient-specific, where we list the provider, who like your organization, and so as of last I checked, it's still pending.
Yes,
I'm awaiting
awaiting certification.
Certification. Yes. That's it.
Yes.
That's the one.
Even if I certify you, which I believe has already been done, you still say awaiting certification. That is one of the things we're trying to get the software to change the way that says it, because even if I've certified the patient, it still says awaiting certification, and you can still go in there and finish the application process at this point.
Okay, well, I didn't know that part, so I guess I could get to work on that as soon as we got off. But one of the things that we need to let people, the letter is good until the end of the year, but if you go through this process, we recommend that you go through the state process immediately, because it limits you to one dispensary.
Yes.
And then whereas the card will allow you to go to all of them that are open in Utah. Yes. Also, you won't be able to get the home delivery component with the letter. You have to have the card for that as well.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm at. I'm kind of still on the state of Utah holding pattern at the moment, but we know how these things work, especially when, it's a brand new thing. But overall, and then you also put out you have 2 YouTube videos out that walks me through this process after I leave your office, which was very helpful.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad that that's helpful. Yeah, we put in, we put together an exact list of, and I put together a YouTube video on both pieces, the front end and the back end of what you need to do. You can see those at utahmarijuana.org, the website. And even if anybody has questions about this, like your QMP did not do the letter or doesn't know how to do it, or you're just a patient, like just go to utahmarijuana.org and you'll be able to see how that process works through the EVS site. And I feel like with the video, the YouTube video, it's a little bit more, it explains it a little better because you can follow along than the information at the government website. Although the government does have, the Department of Health has some pretty good instructions as well.
All right. Unfortunately, again, we're going over, but I wanted to wrap up. And again, this has been fantastic. And we could go on like I said, with always want to leave the audience wanting more. So
Sure.
we can have a part 2 of this conversation very soon. Maybe just a little bit down the road after I've had a little bit of experience. Maybe after. So once I meet with Tim here, then I get my card. Then I have to meet with Tim in 6 months.
That's correct. Yep.
To see,
the law requires us
to see what's up.
Yep. We have to actually follow up with you at least by phone within the first 90 days to make sure the dosing is okay and everything is working okay. So you should hear from your QMP or their qualified staff in the first 90 days. And then at 6 months, you do need to come back and see providers. This is strong medicine. You wouldn't go get a pain prescription and not have to see a medical provider periodically. So I think 6 months I actually think 6 months is stretching it for a lot of new patients to this, but that's what the law wants us to see everybody at 6 months. Then again at 1 year. And then it's open to what the provider and the patient decide. Some people are going to need to be seen more frequently, and some people can go up to a year after that.
Okay, so that's the basic process, the hoops you have to jump through, you might say at this point.
Yep.
And who knows, 6 months from now they could change, or the next legislative session. So let's kind of close off with that. Over the next, say, year, when we have a 1 year recap of this whole thing, where would you like to see the law evolve to from this point?
Well, like I said before, I'd like to see us be able to expand our numbers so that we can help more patients in Utah. And then the other thing I think is we need to learn about this compassionate use board application and navigating that. I think with conditions.
Tell us about that.
Well, conditions that are outside of the 15 qualifying conditions have to go through the compassionate use board. And we need to know more about that. That process needs to be a little more transparent and see if we're getting enough of the people that are outside of the qualifications approved. And that will help shape my opinion about what needs to change with the legislation.
Cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is Tim Pickett in the house, founder of UtahMarijuana.org. I went to his office. You're right at 740 East, 3900 South in Suite 108. Very nice place. And I suggest everybody gets in contact with him. We'll leave all of your contact information in the comments after we're done here.
Thank you.
And I know you're on an uphill climb as far as education. And and
we got a lot of work to do.
I know, but you seem to be bushwhacking pretty good to start with. So, which is good. And I also really want to let our audience know. Please tune in to Utah in the Weeds podcast. It's on iTunes. I found it on Stitcher. I use Stitcher, and it's a fabulous. It's really good. It's well produced. I mean, you've got one of the best co-hosts there is in podcasting around here. So good for you. And so that's great information. You've given us great information. And then if you go and visit Tim at his office, he will very thoroughly assess you and get you in the right path to add this as a relief option for your medicine cabinet. And that's exactly what it is. It's just another tool that you have to get relief that you didn't have before. And that's what, evolution is. You have things you didn't have before to make things better. And that's what you got. So I'm going to ask Tim to stay on after we close our broadcast. And as always, thank you guys very much for tuning in. This is always a great series, and we're fortunate to have great guests, and we can't make it happen if we don't have great people watching like you guys. And thanks for the questions. If you have any questions past, we will forward them on to Tim. We'll give you his information. And until next Tuesday at 2:00 Mountain Daylight Time, we will see you then.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Tim. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.